resources can expand a project's impact. The session will feature community-based organizations and mayors who've worked together to advance shared environmental justice goals. They're going to share their experiences and learnings, and as always, there'll be lots of time for questions from all of you. We really hope that this session will give you a chance to understand how to collaborate with community-based organizations to advance your city or town's environmental justice goals. As always, we want you to post questions, and we'll get to as many as we can along the way. But I'm going to turn it over now to Allison Cassidy, who's the Deputy Assistant Administrator for Strategic Initiatives at the Office of Environmental Justice and External Civil Rights. Allison, the Zoom is yours.
Great. The technical difficulties caused by delay were mine, and I apologize. So yes, I am Allison Cassidy, and I am here to talk mostly about the community change grants, which some of you may be familiar with, but I am going to provide you with some basic background in order to highlight the opportunity that this offers, particularly for local governments and who are trying to solve problems that communities in their jurisdictions have been trying to solve for a long time. So as most of you probably know, EPA received $3 billion through the Inflation Reduction Act to fund environmental and climate justice activities to benefit disadvantaged communities. And $2.8 billion of this is going to grants, and $200 million for technical assistance to help communities and lower capacity local governments and tribes to apply for those grants. And $2 billion of that are the Community Change Grants Program. And so as a baseline, though, for our conversation about the Community Change Grants Program, I think it's important to understand, who is eligible to apply, because it's a key fundamental part of the application and what the program is intended to do. So applicants must either be a partnership of two community-based organizations, or a partnership between a community-based organization, a CBO, and a tribe, or a CBO in a local government, or a CBO in an institution of higher education. So you'll see a trend there that while the CBO does not have to be a lead applicant, all partnerships must include a CBO, and we are requiring partnerships. So a CBO has to be involved. And this is because we want these grants to be truly rooted in community and what the problems that communities have identified over the years, and that they now have the opportunity with this funding to solve, and not in a piecemeal way, which is generally how federal funding has worked. And so this offers a huge opportunity for local governments, for tribes and others to partner with community groups. And the good news is that this program is so broad, Congress intentionally made it broad, which just opens up the range of opportunities, because there are a few places in America that aren't facing at least one of the challenges I'm about to mention. So the program can fund community-led air and other pollution monitoring, prevention, and remediation. And it's purposely broad to include other types of pollution. It's not just air pollution. It's not just greenhouse gas emissions. It's all types of pollution. It's also intended to fund workforce development that can help reduce greenhouse gas emissions and other air pollution. It's intended to help address climate resilience, mitigating the climate and health risks from urban heat islands, extreme heat, and wildfire events, and reducing indoor air toxics and indoor air pollution, and also facilitating engagement of disadvantaged communities in state and federal advisory groups, workshops, rulemakings, and other public processes. So this is a huge range of activities. And so we've divided the program into two tracks. The first one is track one is the big one, the big mama. It's about $2 billion, and they're between $10 million and $20 million a piece. This is the Community-Driven Investments for Change program. And this is, again, where most of the money's going. And I think it's probably of most interest to people on the phone today, or on the phone. That's so old school of me, on the Zoom today. So for track one applicants, the key thing is that this really needs to be place-based. We are trying to benefit a community, and we need to see that, and literally, we require a map, like show us the community that is going to benefit from this program and is probably at the center of the application. And these track one applications need to include at least one climate strategy or one climate related project and one pollution reduction strategy, pollution reduction related project. My goodness. And that's very broad. It is very broad. I can't, repeat that enough. And the goal here too, and again, is we want these projects to be holistic. Too often, a lot of these communities that have been underinvested in the past have been able to access like $100,000 here, maybe for some air pollution monitoring, and maybe $50,000 here over here to like remediate, to do some education about lead paint. But it's very difficult. It's been very difficult for large chunks of funding to come their way to holistically address multiple problems in the community at the same time. And that's the goal of this program. So in addition to requiring track one applicants for this $10 to $20 million chunk of funding to talk about both climate and pollution reduction, we also want the applicants to talk about their plans for community engagement and collaboration. It's very important, not only for communities to be centered in the application, but in the implementation of the program. We also we're requiring what's called a community strength plan. And I'm mentioning this because, again, it kind of goes to the heart of what we're trying to accomplish. We want the applicants to be able to show the long-term benefits to the community. And this is described in more detail in the notice of funding opportunity, the NOFO, exactly what we're looking for. We're also requiring a readiness approach because the statute requires these projects to be done within 3 years. So we need the applicants to be able to show that they can actually achieve that. And then a compliance plan. How are the applicants going to work together to meet all of the different requirements, not only of the grant program, but of the law? One other thing I want to note is that this program is unique in that we are trying to target some geographies in the United States that have faced particular disinvestment. So that includes tribes in Alaska, tribes in the lower 48, southern border communities, US territories, and disadvantaged unincorporated communities. And again, our notice of funding opportunity goes into a little bit more detail about the definitions of those and what we're looking for. So that's track one. Again, it's a huge chunk of funding. Now, track two is also really important, but for different reasons. As I mentioned, the statute says the funding can be used to help build the capacity of organizations to engage with the government. And that's what this one's about. This is $1 million to $3 million, which is still a pretty good chunk of change for a lot of organizations. And it's to help build the capacity of communities to address the environmental concerns in their community, to give them a meaningful voice in the government's decision-making process. And it could be to set up educational and training programs, set up environmental advisory boards, collaborative governance activities with local governments or with, say, a local corporation, and then to help facilitate participation in really important but often wonky government funding and budgeting processes that really dictate, how a community is resourced, but communities may not actually be involved in those conversations all that much. So one thing I want to note, going forward as well, is that this program has some unique application features that I think also reflect the intent of this program. One is that we have a rolling application deadline. It was launched in November in 2023 and it closes in November 2024. And we did that because some people were ready, right away in February. They were ready to submit their applications because they've had a project that they've been working on for a while and they saw this as an opportunity to get funding for it. But others need time. They need time to find a partner to really, hone in on how they want to spend this $20 million to maximum effect. And we didn't want to penalize lower capacity organizations, cities, towns, tribes by having a single application deadline, say on March 1st. So that is why we have a rolling application process. In addition, we are allowing one resubmission. So for example, if somebody applies and they don't score high enough to get funding, they can get a debriefing with EPA. And then through that debriefing, they can learn, what was deficient. They can go back if they want to and try to cure those deficiencies and reapply. That all has to happen though before the application deadline. And then finally, we are offering for track 1 applicants, we are requiring, not offering, oral presentations. And the idea behind this is that it's just another opportunity for communities that maybe have never participated, or community-based organizations that have never participated in like a federal grant funding process and all of the paperwork and narrative that usually goes into that, to like actually verbally explain and make the case for what their application means and what they're trying to accomplish. So those are some unique features that I wanted to call out that may be of interest and you may have questions about. But just to wrap up, and then we can do some questions, is that I just want to emphasize that these projects we do want them to be rooted in community. It's important this is an important opportunity for communities to identify problems and partner with others, including other community-based organizations, local governments, to make lasting change on the ground. And $20 million projects often include infrastructure, completion of which may require or benefit from local government engagement. And so then I would say to local governments who are looking at this program, approach it the same way. Like, what are the problems that communities have identified in the past in your jurisdiction? What solutions are they calling for? And then how can you be part of the solution? And so I'll stop yapping. And with that, I can try to answer a few questions, but I will note for the record and for the lawyers and my agency that I can't answer any questions that require me to divulge non-public information, because we take our grants competition policy very seriously and don't want to unintentionally introduce bias or even the perception of bias into the process. So with that, I'm happy to try to answer questions.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Allison. And thank you for that clarity. We know the lawyers are exacting on these ones. So we're going to answer questions, and we want to keep posting questions for Allison in the chat. While we're doing that, I just wanted to make a quick note about some resources for your town or city. We're sharing a link in the chat for winning strategies for applying for community change grants. As you know, we do these in partnership with these webinars to sort of summarize the key things that are the winning strategies. These are part of a suite of environmental justice grant programs offered by the EPA, which provide financial and technical assistance for environmental and climate justice activities. And, they're intended to benefit underserved and overburdened communities. So we think these winning strategies are particularly helpful. So our first question is from Luann. Would you like to come off camera and ask your question, Luann?
Yeah, you know what? I'm not using VPN, so I don't have my camera, and I'm using my cell phone as a microphone. I just asked a couple questions. One was, since you're on a rolling basis, can you say if anybody has successfully submitted and been awarded? And my other question is, if you could, I know there's a NOFO and you've just given a great explanation, but could you say for this grant, what speaks the loudest to EPA?
On the first question, which is the easier one to answer, is that we have not yet announced any selections. So we have not yet announced any selections for this grant program. We have received applications, but we have not yet announced any selections. There's still, the review process is underway. In terms of what speaks the loudest for EPA, all I can do really there is point you to the notice of funding opportunity and what we are scoring, and the types of, for the track 1 applications in particular, the types of plans and explanations that we are requiring applicants to submit. So that is, community engagement, readiness, community strength. And again, the proof of partnership is really important. Those are all required elements of the application, and then, which means, that speaks to the importance of even making the application eligible, which speaks to the importance of it to the application process.
Okay, so another question we have is it correct that EPA does not recognize fiscal sponsors?
I don't know the answer to that. If I could get the name of the person who answered that asked that question, I can follow up afterward. I think it could be one of those things that it's a case by case basis, but I would need to double check and I don't want to answer incorrectly. So is it okay if I follow up with folks after this call? Okay.
No, that's great. And
sorry about that. Sorry about that.
No, and if there's one, there's somebody on the call who has this question, others might, so we'll share it more broadly. So another question is, what would it be a target deadline to get an initial application in to have time for EPA to review, debrief, and resubmission before the November deadline?
Yeah. Unfortunately, I don't have a magic number or date for that. The best, because again, all applications, including resubmissions, are due by the end of November, which is frighteningly 7 months away, which seems like a lot of time, but it's actually not. So the only guidance I could really give is just submit your application as soon as possible and expect that, we don't know how many applications we're going to be receiving at any given point because it is rolling. That's one of the unique challenges to a rolling application process, is that you can't really predict the ebb and flow. So that's why it's difficult to predict at any given moment how many we may be juggling. So my only advice is just do it as soon as you can.
Great. Another question, folks have heard that workforce development is a priority. Is that accurate?
The Inflation Reduction Act lists workforce development as one of the things that can be funded with this funding. It specifically says, let's see, workforce development that helps reduce greenhouse gas emissions and other air pollutants. So it is one of the strategies that is identified as a climate action strategy that you can, you can submit a project under that. So in that regard, it's no more of a priority than any of the other strategies that are listed, but it is one of the strategies that we accept as a climate pollution reduction strategy.
Great. One more question. Can a for-profit consultant be considered a collaborating entity?
Come back to me on that one. I'd probably be able to answer it in just a second. As soon as I look it up I have FAQs and I know it's in there. So keep asking me and come back to that one as the last question, if you don't mind.
Okay, excellent. Can we partner with more than one CBO in our application? And do we need to identify in case we don't know yet? And does the funding need to pass through a CBO? So those are three separate questions. I can repeat them if you need me to.
So, a CBO, to apply, you have to have a lead applicant, which is essentially the entity that is submitting the application, and a statutory partner, because we're requiring there to be at least two, there have to be two applicants. And one of them has to be a CBO. The other one can be a CBO, a local government, a tribe, or an institute of higher education. The CBO does not have to be the lead applicant, but it has to be either the lead applicant or the statutory partner. And they have to have an agreement, and you have to turn that in as part of your application, explaining how those two entities are going to work in partnership to achieve the goals of the grant. There cannot be more than one lead applicant or more than one statutory partner, but you can have many collaborating entities that you will be working with, that you may provide subawards to. That is not limited, but you cannot have more than one lead applicant and one statutory partner.
And do the CBO partners need to be identified in case they are not known yet?
That's another good question. If you wouldn't mind writing that down, I could reply. I could send you either a reply or a link to our frequently asked questions, which probably has that in there. And I just haven't, it's like 25 pages long and I haven't committed every single one to memory.
That's great. And one other one is, does the funding need to pass?
Sorry, you cut out for a second. Did you say, does it need to pass through?
Does
Michelle, I
the
think your
funding
audio.
need to pass through to the CBO? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. I'm trying to see if I'm not sure I understand the question specifically about passing through. Again, there has to be
my
one.
question. I could clarify if you like.
Okay, sure. I might have to follow up with an answer, but.
Sure. So the question is, if a city, puts in a project to do perhaps solar arrays on municipal buildings that brings, cost savings to the city, is it required that those cost savings be passed on to community members?
I don't know the answer to that question. If you could put that in writing and follow up, and we may be able to answer it. Sorry.
Okay, so I should email you? Or someone
don't know
else
how-
write this down?
We'll help get any unresolved questions to Allison for follow-up and then disseminate the answers to everybody.
That'd be helpful. Thank you.
Thank you.
So one more question. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. In our planning conversations with multiple municipal partners across the country, they're excited about the opportunity, but concerned about the 3-year implementation timeline because of the need for deep community engagement up front and throughout the project. The permitting process for buildings and stormwater management systems in particular, and the large scale, the proposed projects. What is your advice for navigating these kinds of challenges, sort of the long, the short implementation time period and the need for deep community engagement?
I understand. It's certainly, I can understand why it is a challenge. Unfortunately, it's in the statute, so there's nothing that we can do about the 3-year deadline. So the best thing to, is to be able to identify projects or parts of projects that, first of all, can meet the 3-year requirement, and then the partners that you're going to be working with can help you achieve that end goal. That's the best I can do.
Thank you. That's helpful. Is this a Justice 40 program for EPA?
Yes, the entire program must benefit disadvantaged communities, and so it will go toward achieving the agency's Justice 40 goals, which is to exceed the we strive to go way beyond 40.
That's great. Excellent. So now this is our last question. Can we submit for 3 projects in one application?
The definition of project is, I think, in the eye of the beholder. So our focus is you have to submit at least one underneath a climate strategy and at least one under a pollution reduction strategy. And so however you decide to do that is up to you. It's mostly the key thing is one on the climate, at least one on the climate, at least one on pollution reduction. But so if it's 3 projects, sure, as long as you can achieve the other aspects of the application including the 3-year deadline.
Excellent. Okay, so there were a lot of other questions I know we didn't answer yet.
Yeah,
so
I'm sorry.
Them together, and then some of the ones that were more detailed.
Please do.
And
Yeah.
we'll bring most of them to you, and then we'll get them out to everybody who's participating.
Yeah, please do. And then I
Thank
can also, sure. And then I can also, hopefully a lot of them will be very easy for me to send back because a lot of people have submitted questions via our email box that have frequently asked questions that I can then send back to you and very quickly.
Great. Thank you
And
so
I'm
much.
sorry I didn't have it committed to memory.
No,
Should have studied
there's
harder.
a lot of information out there. This is great. Thank you so much. Really appreciate your participation, and we will send you the other questions and look forward to getting that out to everybody. So thank you so much. Really appreciate it. We're now going to turn to our policy panel. And I'm very pleased to welcome our great partner from Accelerator for America, Mary Ellen Wiederwall. I'm thrilled to have her join us today to moderate the panel of mayors and community-based organizations. So Mary Ellen, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Michelle, and good afternoon or good morning, wherever you're coming to us from. I'm Mary Ellen Wiederwall. I'm the president and CEO of Accelerator for America. We are a national nonprofit, nonpartisan organization that works with mayors and local leaders like you all across the country. And I am a City Hall alum from Louisville, Kentucky. I previously led economic and community development there in my hometown, including working with the Office for Sustainability. So feeling right at home here today with all of you and excited to share these stories and provide you some additional information that hopefully will help put you on the track to a successful application. And really thrilled to be a part of this local infrastructure hub together with our partners here at Bloomberg Philanthropies, Results for America, and others. We've been producing with you all and many who are on this screen behind the Zoom, our case stories that tell the story of how you as a local leader went from a great idea to a successful grant application. And in doing that, we hope that you can see in other people's experience how they got it done so that you can then replicate their success. So if you go to the resource page on the Local Infrastructure Hub, you'll see some of our case stories there. And some of them are actually good background for what we're talking about today, which is partnering with community-based organizations. We all know at City Hall, there's never enough time, resources, or money. Turns out they're not making any more time. And so we're here collectively to help get you the resources and hopefully the money that you need to be successful at home. A couple of our case stories point to this community-based local government partnership. You can look at the city of Hoboken, who took a very difficult climate situation there, a flooding area, a problem with environmental justice, and turned it not only into a piece of infrastructure that solved their water problems, too much water in the wrong places, and also created a community amenity and listened to the community as they did that and partnered with folks. One of our more recent case stories is about Athens, Ohio, and how they pursued a CFI grant to really open up the entire part of southeastern Ohio to our new EV infrastructure, and took a lot of partnership within community and with other governments to get this work done. So be sure to check those out, and hopefully they give you ideas about how you can partner in community to get these big ideas done. Today, I'm thrilled to be joined by our old friend, because we've been on more than one of these together, because in Tucson, Mayor Romero is getting amazing things done. Welcome back, Mayor Romero. And her partner there, Claudia Hasso, and they're going to talk about a collaboration. You've heard, there isn't yet a winning application for community change. We're in that evaluation period. So we're lifting up their story today as an example of something that you can then replicate in your community. So Mayor, going to you first, obviously we know we can't get anything done without extra friends. So tell us some of your stories of collaboration with community-based organizations there in Tucson.
Thank you so much for having us, Mary Ellen, and I'm really happy to be here with our community partner, Amistades, and Claudia Hasso has been in our community working for public health issues for decades. Not that I want to reveal her age because she looks like she's 20, but really in all seriousness, I think that here in Tucson, one of my priorities as the mayor was to move fast and furiously to create a climate action and adaptation plan. Tucson is one of the fastest warming cities in the entire country. And as you all have heard, the Southwest is in its 22nd year in drought. And so the accessibility of water and the climate changing and the heat rising in Arizona and in Tucson, voters here in Tucson wanted to make sure that we had a plan. And as the mayor, we started acting fast and furiously. We passed a climate emergency in September of 2020. I got elected in November of 2019, and immediately the first thing I did, and this is advice for other mayors, the first thing I did was to hire a climate and sustainability advisor for the mayor's office, so that my office would push on the policy issues and start engaging the community. The climate emergency that we passed, we worked with community, and those most vulnerable, hardest hit community members were the ones that we reached out to. So we worked with Arizona Youth Climate Coalition, with International Indian Treaty Council, with NAACP of Tucson, Paisanos Unidos, San Javier Farm Co-op, and Southside Worker Center, and others in our community, to create a roadmap in that climate action work that we started. And so that's where we started our work within the community. Amistades is one of the organizations that we reached out to come to us and tell us what was most important for their communities. We started this work with the climate emergency and continued this work through our 14 months of work with community, with our Tucson Resilient Together, which is our climate action plan. And the 120 something ideas that we came up with for our climate action and adaptation plan came from community. Those are the priorities that community put as policy priorities at our table. And that's where Amistades really picked up that work and said, we want to work very specifically on public health issues and how heat affects the most vulnerable amongst us, children and seniors and those that are unhoused, those individuals that are living on monthly allowances like Social Security and can't pay their $500 electric bill because they have to purchase their medication. And so we started talking about resilience hubs and cooling centers, and that's what Claudia and Amistades really picked up on and said, we want to lead here. And so that is something that I, as the mayor in the city of Tucson, have been wanting to do, right? We can't do it alone as a city. We need our community partners to pick up the work and help us in climate adaptation for our communities. I don't know, Claudia, if you wanted to jump in and you know, fill any gaps that I'm missing.
Certainly, Mayor. Yes. Well, thank you first. My name is Claudia Hasso. I'm the president and CEO of Amistades here in Southern Arizona, Tucson, Arizona. Thank you for the opportunity to be part of today's panel. And thank you to Mayor Romero for her leadership and partnership. And we have tremendous respect and admiration for you, Mayor. So thank you for that. Yeah, Amistades is a Latino-led, Latino-serving organization right here in Tucson, in Southern Arizona. And we have a mission that's grounded in social justice, race equity, and cultural preservation. So we work to improve health equity and increase civic participation and climate action in the Latino community through education and organizing. And we acknowledge as an organization that communities know best what they need. Our organization simply provides the resources to the community so those individuals and families can reach their goals. Environmental justice is a public health challenge. The environment and the community, they are intimately connected. Community wellness and the environment are intimately connected. And that's why we've taken on this work as an organization. And with the Justicia Juntos, which is Justice Together project, and all of our work, we integrate a culturally tailored power building approach where, you know, Allison, I heard you say rooted in community and community centered for lasting change. And what we do is power building. We use an approach where Latino communities are engaged, Trust is built, unity is reached, and power is achieved. And in the case of Justicia Juntos, we want the power to be held by the community to both understand and combat this extreme heat problem. So in this project, we're going to create greater dialogue and positive environmental action in our community. We're going to demonstrate how environmental problems affect people in Tucson, those specifically that Mayor Romero mentioned, the most vulnerable in the 85706 zip code, which is a southern part of Tucson. And we want to provide practical solutions so that everyone, especially those in our community, can help solve these problems. With a community-led approach and a scalable framework, we hope that the successes that we achieve through this project can be modeled in other Latino communities, in other zip codes, in other cities or states, so that we can have a larger, stronger impact for current and future generations. This is an intergenerational issue, and it's under-discussed within the Latino community. So it's time, and we cannot say enough about Mayor Romero and the city and their team about how swiftly and strategically they've been moving in this space. And what we're doing together, I do believe, is a model for other CBOs and mayors and how they can work together strategically.
Thank you for that. And I want to come back to you both with a joint question, and then we're going to bring Kate Johnson in at C40 Cities, who's another great partner with all of us. So you all have an existing relationship. And for those of you who have been through the NOFO and the frequently asked questions, you'll see that there is some preference for building from existing relationships. The NOFO does allow for new friendships and new partnerships, but you're going to have to do a lot of homework to get successful at this. Obviously, you two have been working together for a long time and but a lot of this is about trust building. And there's a lot of distrust between government and community. So I'd love to hear from both of you where this relationship started and how did you build that trust? Because a lot of CBOs, frankly, question government and don't have strong partnerships or might be at odds with their local government. Tell us about how you build that partnership for the long haul.
Well, I've been serving my community here in Tucson for more than 20 years. 16 of those years, I've served as an elected official, first 12 as a council member for the city of Tucson, and now going on my 5th year as mayor. So it really takes a long time. And so that's why it's so good to be able to use individuals in your programs internally. For example, like I said, I immediately hired a climate and sustainability advisor for the mayor's office. That person already had many connections within our community. So she was well known in the community. And we were very intentional as we were working on our climate action and adaptation plan, Tucson Resilient Together, to work within the nonprofit organizations, including Amistades, but I mentioned the NAACP and Paisanos Unidos and Southside Worker Center and others. And we went to them and their leadership groups and hired ambassadors for our Tucson Resilient Together planning. And those ambassadors got a stipend, and we had them lead. So we didn't go to our community saying, this is our climate action plan, and this is what we're going to do. We went to them through the ambassadors to say, what is concerning you? What are your needs? And we've got to move quickly. And we did have the ambassadors help us lead, and hired a consultant that had a lot of experience in engaging communities, especially vulnerable communities, and did very specific engagement pop-ups and meetings in the communities that are the least likely to show up. So you know, it really takes the engagement of mayor and council, city government, and nonprofit organizations, and then they need to lead our work, telling us what is important. What we found out is that communities are very concerned about heat and what it does to our most vulnerable. For seniors, we see a lot of heat-related illnesses and deaths in Arizona. For children, we see a lot of incidents of asthma and pulmonary diseases. And so people want us to act on heat mitigation. Our Tucson Million Trees Initiative is a nature-based approach that we are partnering with another nonprofit organization, which is Tucson Clean and Beautiful, Trees for Tucson. We created an equity map in the city of Tucson where we have the heat island, where the most heat island is happening, where the hottest places in Tucson are. And if you can layer that heat island map with a low income map, it's practically the same map. And so our approach is to lead with an eye to equity and engage the communities that are the most vulnerable. And so that's where we are investing first and most urgently. And so we've already planted about 100,000 trees in our community. And we've used that equity map to make sure that we're planting trees where they're most needed. And we started a solar for all program as well, so that we can help our seniors and our low-income families within those communities, because one of the biggest complaints we hear are the electric bills, $500 electric bills during the summer. And so that's the work that we're doing on the ground here. And that's the benefit of being able to lead hand in hand with nonprofit organizations.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And Claudia, real quickly, from the CBO's perspective, how do you want to be approached? If you're talking to leaders here in local government who are like, yeah, my CBOs aren't real happy with me right now, or we should be doing this. How do you build that bridge with local government? And then we'll go to Kate to talk about some of the TA resources available.
Thank you, Mary Ellen. We want to be approached in like the community, in an authentic, respectful, meaningful way. And part of the magic that Mayor Romero brings in her approach, and the approach that she models for her team, is that she comes to CBOs and to individuals in the community that way. So that is really effective. And we do have shared goals. We have mutual respect and trust. So those things matter when CBOs and local governments are forming partnerships. And there has to be history and work that's been done in the community that is like-minded and aligned with what we're trying to accomplish. And in Mayor Romero's case, she's been in the community for years doing wonderful work. And we met over the course of time, and we've touched, there have been touch points that include various community projects. So this is a longstanding partnership, and it's grounded in trust, respect, and aligned goals, shared goals. And in this case, we're very committed with this particular project to complementing the city's greater climate action plan. We want to make sure that we're complementing the goal of more community engagement and participation. We want to make sure that we're directly supporting the city's objective of educating residents about the climate-related dangers, and that we are contributing to the city's mission for greater community safety. We are looking at setting the stage for the development of 2 culture-centered, innovative resilience hubs that are aimed at increasing community preparedness and climate-related emergencies. So there's so many things that this partnership is going to bring, and some of it is setting the stage for the next iteration of our work in years to come, because this is a long-term goal.
climate mitigation and adaptation does not happen overnight. So make a lot of friends, build a lot of partnerships. We've got a great partnership at C40 Cities, Kate Johnson joining us, and they work hand in glove with climate mayors and the Urban Sustainability Directors Network. I suspect many of our Zoom friends here are in one or more of those groups. And Kate, there's a lot of technical assistance available today. And I was looking at all of those rich questions in the chat right now. And one of my favorite acronyms in our business, and aren't there a lot of acronyms, are the TIC-TACs. Just one of many technical assistance resources. So Kate, if you could give us a view into where should people go to learn more, what's some of the best TA resources out there? And we do have time on this. We're not right up against a deadline. So how can people learn more and perfect an application at this stage?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much, Mary Ellen. And thank you, Mayor Romero and Claudia, for sharing your partnership. I think it resonates with me, and it's certainly, similar to the partnerships that we're hearing in so many of our cities. And I think what's most exciting about this program is that while many, cities, whether it's through their sustainability offices or their mayors, have been engaging their community partners in planning, as it sounds like you all did in Tucson, now there's actually money available to implement those holistic strategies. And so I think, starting with the plans you've developed and the partnerships and the relationships you've built, and then taking advantage of the technical assistance that's available to actually put that into an application for this program is where folks are at. I'm probably not even going to be able to list all of the technical assistance resources that are available, but Mary Ellen, you mentioned the TIC-TACs. These are regional technical assistance centers that are funded by the EPA. So you can find out who your technical assistance provider is through your EPA regional office, or we can share the link probably to the national program in the chat. There's also specific technical assistance that EPA is providing for project development for this program that's being provided through a partner called Indina. We can be sure to follow up and give folks that information. And then in addition, I would be remiss not to mention the local infrastructure hub, since we are on a local infrastructure hub sponsored webinar. Depending on what region of the country you are in, there is technical assistance or grant writing assistance in some cases available through partners like the Southeast Sustainability Directors Network and others. And so that's for local governments. And there's also technical assistance available to the community-based organizations that you are working with as well. And so we've partnered with the Environmental Protection Network, which is providing technical assistance to community organizations. And so there's a whole web of TA out there. And if I think, use folks on this webinar and the EPA resources in order to get connected with that.
Thank you. Yes, there's no shortage of folks who are able to help. And I appreciate Jamie throwing in there into the chat some resources as well for folks to click on. I don't know if you're like me, when I'm on a webinar, I just click on something and let it open, in my Google Chrome, and then I come back to it later. And I keep like a ridiculous number of tabs open on Chrome. Crashed many a computer doing that. Kate, you are in a great position to see what other people are doing across the country. Do you have some other bright spots you want to lift up at this point?
As a network of cities, that's kind of like asking to pick a favorite child, which we never
totally
like
unfair.
to do, because I think all of our cities are doing amazing things. I think maybe one example I'll lift up, because it's fairly unique in a city context, is we've been working with the city and county of Los Angeles for several years on a just transition framework and task force for in their city who work in the oil and gas industry, which not many cities have, actual oil and gas extraction within their city boundaries. So it's, at least for our network, a pretty unique, it's a unique approach, but I think it's a good example of, this task force has built these relationships and identified the strategies needed to help these communities transition over the course of many years. And now they can put that, sort of relationship building and collaborative effort to leverage into, applications, not just for this grant. So I think this grant opportunity is a great one, but there's others as well. think a number of cities across C40 and USDN and climate mayors are excited about resilience hubs. And so it was great to hear that from Tucson. And prior to coming to C40, I worked for 8 years for the city of Washington, D.C., where we launched the first resilience hub thanks to some federal funding. But I think that is a concept that is a great fit for this program because it takes a partnership between local governments and community to do that in a meaningful way. And it can be challenging to fund those in a holistic manner because you might have solar funding over here and energy efficiency funding from one pot and maybe some greening money over there. And this is an opportunity to really take a holistic approach to advancing resilience hubs, really at a neighborhood or a community scale, which is really exciting.
I love that. And I also love the scale of these grants, that there can be so many of them at a really nice sum of money. It will not come close to repairing the damage that has been done to many of our low-income and disadvantaged communities who have been disproportionately impacted by the infrastructure decisions, the energy decisions, openly discriminatory decisions in our country for a long time. But we can get started. What a great place to get started. We've got just a couple of minutes here, Mayor, before we go to our poll and close out here. I'd love to hear a couple of other ideas, Mayor, that you may have for what you're going to do next and what you're hearing from your colleagues, and then we will get to the last chapter here.
Well, first and most importantly, I really want to thank the Biden-Harris administration for being champions of the Inflation Reduction Act. This is a dream come true, to be honest with you, for cities like Tucson that had the vision. Our community and I had the vision, but without the Inflation Reduction Act funds, we would not be able to be doing what we're doing in Tucson. We have seen an investment of millions of dollars, not just to organizations like Amistades that are going to help us with resilience hubs, but also, for example, with the city of Tucson in partnership with Tucson Clean and Beautiful, we're going to see a $5.7 million from urban forestry funds from the Inflation Reduction to continue planting our trees. And by the way, also teach the future, right? Also train the future arborists and environmentalists and environmental scientists here in our community to continue this work all into the future. So the millions of dollars that cities are seeing based on the Inflation Reduction Act is important. It's an important piece to talk about. What's next is just continue to layer the work that we're doing, especially with the eye to equity. That's why I love the Justice 40 approach and the approach of this program in terms of investment, because it's not just like the planting trees, important nature-based solution for gobbling greenhouse gases, the educational component that Amistades is going to do with us in Spanish, in the language of that vulnerable communities here in Tucson need to hear it. But also in terms of the infrastructure that we can do. Infrastructure in terms of using green infrastructure to water our trees, right? We are making sure that we're taking every drop of water that falls from the sky and funneling it to our trees, because as I said before, water is very valuable in Arizona, where we've gone through a 22 years of drought. So using green infrastructure, we call the program Storm to Shade, and continuing seeing the federal funds investing in it is important. So we take advantage of green water harvesting, funnel rainwater, take water from the streets that usually floods neighborhoods, and those neighborhoods especially that are low-income neighborhoods, and then uses that water to create shade in those communities. And then of course, putting continued investment in other places of infrastructure in those low-income communities that have been historically underinvested. So lots of work to do. Cooling corridors and resilience hubs are two things that we want to make sure that we get much better at. We want to take people out of their cars, have them use our transit system, which, by the way, by 2025, we will have a no to low emission transit fleet, the biggest in the Southwest, thanks to federal funds. But also we want to make sure that the people that are using that transit system have some shade when they're waiting for the bus to get them to school and work and their doctor's appointments. So that and resilience hubs are important because here in Arizona, we see monsoons during the summer. They're incredible rainstorms that are violent at times, that brings down our electric grid. And so we need to make sure that we have places for seniors and children and vulnerable communities to go to while the electric grids are repaired during those summer storms. And we see more than 110-degree weather here during the summer. So we need to get really good at this. And this is the partnerships that we're seeing because of federal investments through the Biden-Harris administration, and also with partnerships like Amistades and nonprofit organizations in our community.
Well, thank you for such a rich set of ideas for us to all work on and relevant to communities everywhere. Regina, Claudia, Kate, thank you so much. We'll throw it to the Results for America and Bloomberg team to close us out real quick. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mary Ellen, thank you so much. And thank you, Mayor. Thank you to our panelists. Such important content. We're going to wrap it up now. Please respond to our Zoom poll. Also want to make a special pitch for small and mid-sized cities to register for our boot camp. So the registration is open. These small and mid-sized communities can apply to receive free expert technical assistance to develop the strong competitive grant applications. These trainings are tailored for communities with populations under 150,000, but in fact, most of past participants have been from communities with populations under 10,000. So I think that's a really important fact, and encourage communities of all sizes, but especially, communities under 1,000 or 10,000, I'm sorry, communities that have participated in these trainings have already secured more than $200 million, with more being announced every month. So it's great news and been very exciting. So please register for our boot camps. Quickly, I want to tell you about two more upcoming sessions. We have one Tuesday, May 14th at 2 p.m., a session on sustainable and resilient bridges. And then the other is on Wednesday, May 22nd at 2 p.m. We're hosting a session on microtrenching with perspectives from cities that have leveraged this technique for broadband constructions. So we will send out this information as well as answers to the questions, but wanted to make sure you get those on your calendar, May 14th and May 22nd. And as always, you'll find our calendar of upcoming events at our website, localinfrastructure.org. And want to thank you for participating today. Thanks so much.